Steven Crowder, Narcissist, Part 4. We continue our examination of the evidence in relation to Steven Crowder's behaviour, and this time examine an article from Rolling Stone by Nikki McCann Ramirez, which reports on his spat with the Daily Wire. Far-right YouTuber Steven Crowder has kicked off a public feud with the Daily Wire after the right-wing news outlet approached him with a measly 4-year contract offer worth a pitiful $50 million and some fiduciary obligations on his part. Pausing there, you would think that such an offer would be seen as pretty decent for many people. Of course, Crowder believes that he's worth more. He might be right about that, but it does exhibit a sense of entitlement. Furthermore, what began as a private contract proposal has devolved into a public spat. Ordinarily, of course, individuals, if they're negotiating about what they're worth, they would keep it private. But it's more likely that a narcissist would want to take matters public as a means of dealing with the threat to control that they face with not getting their own way. So let us imagine, for instance, that Mr. Crowder believes that he should get $100 million. So when the representatives of the Daily Wire say, here's a contract, these are some obligations and duties on your part, it's worth $50 million for you over a 4-year period, he deems that to be a threat to his control subconsciously because it's not to the value that he believes he's worth. He isn't able to persuade them to give him what he wants, thus he can't directly assert control over them. Ordinarily, an individual would try and deal with matters privately by discussing, I can offer this, and I believe that I'm worth this, and I have an audience of this size, etc., etc., or I've got an offer from X party, which is better than what you're proposing, in an attempt to gain leverage and persuade that organisation to offer a larger sum. But Crowder didn't go down that route. Instead, he took the instance public, and that suggests that there might have been something causing him to do that so that he could gain an indirect assertion of control by trying to smear the Daily Wire by suggesting that the offer was pitiful and getting favourable public opinion, which would then give him a subconscious sense of control. This public spat has involved long-form video responses, angry tweets, and secretly recorded phone conversations. Again, disclosing the detail of a secretly recorded phone conversation is deceitful, shows a lack of boundary recognition, a lack of emotional empathy, and a sense of entitlement. Recently, Crowder launched the Stop Big Con initiative and accused conservative media giants of being no better than big tech and putting profit over the honest defense of conservative values. In a video posted to his YouTube channel, Crowder described a period of free agency following his departure from the Blaze in December. The host lambasted proposed contracts he received from parties he refused to publicly name, which would require him to actually make content and drive revenue for the company. Is that an individual that is showing a sense of entitlement? Is this a little bit like Harry's wife? I want the money, but I don't want to do the work. At no point did Crowder specify the monetary value that had been offered to him, but it didn't take fans long to analyse context clues and redactions from screenshots Crowder displayed and deduce that the contract Crowder was torching had been offered by the Daily Wire. Crowder, who had previously lambasted NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick for comparing the lease contracts to slavery, complained that the proposals floated to him like the one from the Daily Wire were essentially slave contracts. Hypocrisy. Will Summer of the Daily Beast pointed out on Thursday in November, around 2 months after the Daily Wire offered Crowder $50 million, the host publicly supported Kanye's West claims that Jewish talent executives controlled the entertainment industry through exploitative contracts. Ben Shapiro, the founder and editor of the Daily Wire, is Jewish. Smearing, paranoia, conspiracy theories. Crowder particularly took issue with provisions in the offer that would penalise his compensation if the show faced advertiser boycotts or a loss of revenue that the company could not replace within a period of 90 days. If this show had to be advertiser-friendly on YouTube, well, those guidelines pretty much read, don't say anything offensive ever, said Crowder, who had been demonetized on YouTube. He also encouraged fans to sign onto his new email list and promised to aid in building an independent network for conservative content creators. The Daily Wire, which hosts some of the most prominent names in the reactionary right, including Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Jordan B. Peterson, and Candace Owens, was quick to respond. Co-founder and co-CEO Jeremy Boring confirmed in a 52-minute video that they had issued the offer, a non-binding term sheet, with the hope of entering negotiations with Crowder. Boring indicated that the offer was so large that it potentially put all of our investments at risk, and displayed an image of the initial contract offer showing a proposed $50 million over a 4-year period, with the possibility of an additional $25 million upon renewal. The contract reads like a dream: 4 weeks of paid vacation, full editorial control over content produced, a staff to help promote and adapt content, and the right to retain ownership of any content Crowder produced prior to joining the Daily Wire. Responding to Crowder's claims that the company was doing the bidding of big tech by penalising potential loss of advertising revenue, Boring explained that a contract represents a joint venture between the parties, meaning that both parties lose a little when revenue is affected. It would appear that this is a jolly generous contract, and therefore the reaction of Crowder does show a massive sense of entitlement. The article continued by explaining, Stephen's philosophy seems to be, I deserve to be paid millions and millions and millions of dollars, whether my show drives the revenue or not. Sense of entitlement, lack of accountability. That's not a business relationship. He's looking for a benefactor, Boring told viewers. He also revealed that in a phone call with Crowder following the publication of his video on Thursday, the host indicated he believed he was worth closer to $30 million a year. You can't just say we're going to pay you $50 million even if the show doesn't bring in any money, adding that $50 million minus 25% is not punishment by the standards of any human being. On Thursday night, Crowder played portions of the phone call, sense of entitlement, lack of boundary recognition, which he had recorded without Boring's knowledge, in a response video. Crowder indicated that his frustration wasn't about the money. No, actually, although he doesn't realise this, it's about his subconscious need for control, but about a larger opposition to conservative media companies being dependent on advertising guidelines designed by social media companies and the people who hate everything we stand for. It is incumbent upon conservatives, if we believe what we say, to uncouple, to divest from big tech. Crowder said to not rely on playing ball with Facebook and with YouTube to grow their movement. In the recorded call, Crowder encouraged Boring to restructure the business model of the Daily Wire. Again, that shows a sense of entitlement, saying, it's your business, but I'm going to tell you how to run it. When Crowder questioned the CEO as to whether up-and-coming talent were offered similar terms in their contract, Boring replied in the affirmative, at one point telling Crowder that it was perfectly normal for young creators to become wage slaves for a little bit to grow their brand. I will play the part of that call where we talked about our kids' Christmas and him buying baby formula for his brother's children, Boring tweeted after Crowder's video went live, but I wouldn't even know how to secretly record phone calls with my friends, which demonstrates a particular slapdown of the behaviour of Crowder. The back and forth has prompted responses from many in conservative media, especially those working at the Daily Wire. Co-founder Ben Shapiro said on his Thursday show that there was something rather nasty about attacking people who have been friends for over a decade on the basis of your own misinterpretation of a document that offers you $50 million. Following the revelation that Crowder recorded his call with Boring, Shapiro called Crowder's actions despicable. Candace Owens, who joined the outlet in 2021, called Crowder's actions a bitch move and raised allegations that he had mistreated employees while working at The Blaze. Matt Walsh stressed that he and other Daily Wire hosts are in no way censored by their employer. The suggestion that we're being somehow muzzled or controlled is blatantly absurd, he wrote. Walsh would later respond to a supporter of Crowder telling him that no one should trust the sort of man who secretly records phone calls with his friends and then publishes. Boring threw in a jab on Thursday about how Crowder has always been buoyed by companies with their own interests. Stevens never had to create the company that actually distributes, markets and monetizes the content, he said, adding that the whole time I've known him has worked for someone else, has been paid by someone else. He's not exactly a self-made man. So this spat certainly shows a sense of entitlement on the part of Crowder, a lack of accountability for his actions, responses to potential threats to control, a need to have that control. But it doesn't end there. As reported in the Daily Beast, right-wing shock jock Stephen Crowder tossed a grenade into the conservative web show world this week when he accused fellow pundit Candice Owens of trying to extort him with details of his divorce, a separation he blamed on his wife. Provocation. Smearing. Days later, Crowder is now on the back foot, with Crowder's attorney reportedly rebuffing a cease and desist letter from Owens, and with Crowder's ex-wife's family releasing a statement accusing Crowder of emotional abuse. More of that later. Crowder, the host of the show Louder with Crowder, has been in divorce proceedings since 2021, he announced on his show on Tuesday. Crowder claimed he made the announcement in response to veiled threats from fans on the right, namely Candice Owens, who hosts her own show on the Daily Wire. Crowder played clips from a January episode of Owens' show in which Owens attributed a feud between Crowder and the Daily Wire to unspecified personal issues in Crowder's life. Crowder suggested that those comments, plus alleged behind-the-scenes attacks, amounted to extortion, and that Owens was threatening to leak information about his divorce, demonstrating there a response to perceived threats to control, paranoia. If you're familiar with the idea of extortion, then you know the feeling well, Crowder told his audience, going on to claim that some other issues or inferences have been more pernicious behind the scenes with demands and threats to use this information, which they believe would be so publicly embarrassing to me and my wife in a difficult time that it could be used, knowingly putting my children in harm's way. Triangulation with wife, triangulation with children, disclosure of information in public. Owens has denied the extortion allegations and told the Daily Beast she sent Crowder a cease and desist. On Thursday, she said she received a response from his lawyer stating that she did not have the grounds for a defamation lawsuit, nullification of threat to control. I sent him a cease and desist based off his claims, which made it very clear that he was accusing me of extortion and heavily insinuating that something happened behind the scenes where I somehow threatened him and his child, Owens told the Daily Beast. His lawyer came back and basically said that my claims were not actionable because he was using the term extortion as a feeling. The attorney's letter states that Mr. Crowder's opinions fall far short of any defamation. At most, he's merely opined comparatively the feeling of certain misconduct to his own personal state of being. Again, at most, they are simply reminiscent, in Mr. Crowder's personal opinion, of the specifically referenced type of misconduct. A Crowder spokesperson did not return the Daily Beast request for comment. So essentially, he, Crowder, knew he was lying, Owens alleged. He knew that people would discern from it, but now he's backtracking it privately by trying to make it seem like my video made him feel like it could have been extortion, which is obviously bullshit. But this is what Stephen Crowder does. He lies for a living. Owens theorised that Crowder made his announcement now after his once ally Owen Benjamin leaked news of Crowder's divorce this week. She also speculated that the announcement was meant to distract from a recent interview in which a former Crowder employee accused Crowder of censoring him. That would be deflection. What about this? Well, Hollywood in toto, with an article by Christian Toto, leads with Landau. Stephen Crowder censored me, fellow comment. It states, Stephen Crowder said he went public with his Daily Wire contract dispute for a vital reason. The website's initial contract to Crowder, valued at $50 million for 4 years, said he'd get paid less if his show got censored by big tech platforms like YouTube. It's why Crowder signed a deal with Rumble, the free speech alternative to YouTube. That kind of censorship, Crowder warned, cannot stand. Now, of course, he may well be using the truth there, but once again it does appear that he's reacting to a threat to control. Now, former Louder with Crowder host Dave Landau says Crowder routinely censored his commentary on the video podcast, and worse, allegation of hypocrisy. Landau opened up about leaving the popular show on You're Welcome with Michael Malice. Landau shared how he knows how to be a co-host in the modern era, witness his work alongside radio legend Anthony Cumia on Compound Media. He similarly supported Crowder during their time together, but in the final months of their professional relationship, Crowder kept Landau on a tight leash. I had been more censored as things went on. For example, I couldn't use the word ejaculate, Landau said. The restrictions didn't stop there. Landau alleged Crowder had a dump-style button to silence him if he spoke too much on the show, assertion of control. A light was put into the studio. It was his rant button, and it was basically a Dave don't talk button. Landau recalled of both the button and the light that flashed when it was deployed. When it was hit, I wasn't supposed to talk, and Crowder would press it. I know my job. I know that he talks a lot. I know that he's the star of the show. I know when to sit back. It's what I did with Anticumia for years. It's what I do, he said. I'm not ever trying to steamroll him. It was just, hey, don't be funnier than Crowder. That's the truth. I mean, it sounds bitter, but I knew it was true because I was pulled aside, and it was, make sure if you're doing a rant or you're riffing, he gets the last word, he said. You were told this explicitly? Malice asked. Yes. Even if I did have a funnier joke, I'd just leave it out. It was important for the fans to not hear it. I always thought it was my job as a comedian to leave out the good one, Landau deadpanned. Someone who's so pro-free speech and non-censorship, he was really about censorship of me. Hypocrisy, he said, adding he was forgiving of the issue due to Crowder's medical woes at the time. The Michigan native later said Crowder's censorial mood extended to fellow comic Matt McClary. Landau planned a stand-up comedy special in Dallas, and Crowder asked to join the lineup. Landau agreed, knowing his colleague would help promote it. The initial show became 2 sold-out shows thanks to the Crowder connection. McClary, an off-screen Landau pal, opened both shows with material that earned a standing ovation. Landau then asked Crowder if McClary could co-host Louder with Crowder on a day when he wouldn't be there. Crowder agreed. Later, Landau learned McClary had been blocked from that guest co-hosting gig without explanation. Nullification of threat to control. Crowder texted, "What's done is done." Haughtiness, dismissiveness, according to Landau. What does that mean? It's your show, Landau recalled. Crowder called Landau up and yelled at him over the guest hosting issue and related topics. Exhibition of heated fury. He told me he owns me, Landau said of the heated conversation. Objectification. It was venomous. I saw a different person that I had heard rumours about. Then he said Matt McClary couldn't do his routine's closing bit, which is killer, because it's too dirty. If we were going to tour together, he said. There was projection about he was angry about how well that bit did. The bit in question was a personal anecdote about McClary's high school wrestling days and his Asperger's syndrome. Crowder allegedly would tell Landau before their live performances to, let's keep it clean, despite the latter's penchant for dark adult material. Hypocrisy, assertion of control. Why? This has been me for 20 years, Landau said. Landau used the Malice Show appearance to reveal he signed a deal with Blaze TV to star in a video podcast sketch series set to debut in May or June. Interestingly, in the comments, somebody called Chad writes, Crowder's show is entertaining, but the guy is obviously an egomaniac. It's why he pulled the stunt he did with Daily Wire, and I'm not surprised by this. Phil writes, below the line, oh, the hypocrisy. Mr. Daily Wire is evil for trying to censor me, Crowder. Oh, the hypocrisy. Accordingly, it would appear that there is a hypocritical behaviour with regard to the censorship of somebody else as part of a nullification of threat to control. But let us see what else has been stated about Mr. Crowder. Returning to the feud between Crowder and Owens, their feud dates back to January, when Crowder went public with a job offer that he'd received from the Daily Wire. In a clip from Owens' January show, she describes Crowder's actions as a possible result of personal distress. Stephen has a lot going on, I guess is the best way to say it. He has a lot going on, and that should be clear because people don't do stuff like this if there's not a lot going on in their life, Owens said in the clip. Well, actually, individuals may well engage in this behaviour not because there's a lot going on in their life, but because their narcissism causes them to do so. Spats with Ben Shapiro, with Candice Owens, with the comedian Landau. Instances of Crowder disclosing private information, showing a sense of entitlement, a lack of accountability and poor boundary recognition. Triangulation with people, triangulation with children. Showing a response to perceived threats to control, showing the necessity of nullifying threats to control, exhibition of heated fury, operation of facade. The narcissistic indicators are certainly now starting to stack up. But now we're going to move on to some video examination. Join me in part 5 for that.